Hello coders, good afternoon, good evening. It is episode 115 of the How to Code Well podcast. There is a bit of a delay, so I do apologize why I'm looking around, because there seems to be a bit of a delay with the stream. So today we're going to be talking about production ready, what that means, what does it mean? That's the gist of today's show, the topic, if you will. And it's different, I think, for different people, different developers, different projects. But we'll get into the weeds in that in just a second. Let's before we get into that, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. So I have an apology to make. I didn't push out last week's podcast for reasons of just being super busy. So I will be pushing that out tomorrow. Last week's tomorrow. But I think next week, or there will be a week coming up where I won't be able to do a live stream. So it'll get itself in sync at some point. So if you don't follow me on Twitter, please do at How to Code Well. I'll put down the date in which I'm going to have to miss there. So yes, I do apologize for not doing it last week. I have it already. It's been exported. I just need to publish it and do some pre-flight checks, that kind of stuff. So it will happen. Last week's stream will go to the podcast player. I am sat down. I don't normally sit down for these things, but unfortunately, I went out for a run on Tuesday and I rolled my ankle, and so I'm sat down. That's why I'm not stood up. That's why I didn't stream as well on the Tuesday on YouTube, because I didn't want to stand for that. So hopefully in the next few weeks it'll get better and I'll be able to stand and do those normal YouTube live streams. And recently I've been working on some DevOps stuff. So I've got sort of like this week off. I've been working on getting a site live in staging and working on the DevOps side. So a lot of Terraform, a lot of Ansible, a lot of firewall-y stuff. That kind of jazz. So I've probably got some thoughts on how to do all those things efficiently. I might sort of spin that up into a podcast at some point. But it got me thinking about, I am essentially creating a production-esque ready environment that is in staging, so it's behind closed doors, if you will, but on the internet. And it got me thinking as to what is the definition of production ready. What does that mean? And I believe that it means very different things to different people. So I've got some notes up here. Let me bring them up. So and if you see this and are watching and are like, hang on a minute, no, that's I don't agree with that definition, then please do let me know in the chat. This is live, obviously, every Thursday at 8 p.m. apart from last Thursday, of course, at 8 p.m. British summertime on YouTube. And the definition of production ready is today's topic. So let me just go through the notes here. So, in my opinion, this means different things to different developers, different projects, and different industries. So, for example, an online bank, so whoever you bank with, and you do it online, will have a different definition to a definition of like an online news agency, which could have a different definition to an online charity, because they have different concerns, different responsibilities, and therefore they have different requirements and different constraints put upon them, especially when you're talking about online banking, then that other industries don't have. I'm going to just switch these windows because I keep looking over here. This is a problem when you have a very big monitor. I've got a nice big monitor here, and I keep having to move my whole body into different directions to get the notes. Okay, so yeah, it means different things to different people and different industries. This is all my opinion, so don't take this as gospel. It's just what I think. In broad terms, production ready means that the software has been built to a standard that meets all of the actors' demands. So when I say actors, I mean the not just the people who are using the software or developing the software or the founders of that project or the managers of that project, but also the external communications to that particular project. So, for example, it could be an API, it could be another type of remote connection. And in even broader terms, the definition of production ready, in my opinion, can be defined as usable, reliable, available, stable, and secure. So very fluffy terms, very sort of buzzword bingo there. But essentially all production-ready systems, regardless of where they are, kind of have to fall within this kind of set. And it's very different, like I said, for different industries, because some will need to have more security-driven responsibilities than other industries like online news agencies that are seen by millions of people across the globe, whereas your online bank might only be for a certain country, for instance. They would have different responsibilities for things like scalability. Yes, the online bank would need scalability, but maybe an online news agency, an outlet, would need to have higher scalability for having various different countries access their material, whereas maybe an online bank, you can only access it from a particular country. That's what I'm trying to sort of carve out here. There's different responsibilities, different requirements. And so this sort of, it's not really a triangle because there's like four things here: usability, reliability, availability, stable, and secure. I guess you would call it the square of production ready. There'll be different industries, different devs, different managers would lean on more of those sides of that cube, of that square, more than others. So production ready also isn't the size of the deployment. So this is a weird one, because when you first do a deployment of a system, that is usually, and it should really be, the biggest deployment you ever do, because you've gone from nothing to something. Whereas once that's done, and once you've got that live and in production, you're then doing increments upon that, and therefore those increments are usually smaller than the sum of all the parts. So a production ready isn't defined by the size. So you can't say a huge deployment must be should be more production ready than smaller deployments. You have different definitions of production ready for those specific things. So, for example, if you're isolating certain features of a project, those features, when you deploy them, need to be production ready. And again, I go back to the definition of production ready will be different for your industries, for your devs, and for your managers, depending on the projects and so on and so forth. Okay, let me turn that off because that's going to be frustrating. Sorry, I left my phone off silent. Okay, so essentially the question should be, is the software that I, the developer, have created, is it fit for purpose? And now we get into the weeds of my definition. The developer's definition of production ready is actually different to my manager's definition of production ready, which is different to the QA's definition of production ready, because I care about specific things from a developer's standpoint more than or less than the manager, the product owner, the stockholder, shareholder, or the tester. They'll all have very different definitions of production ready. I'm going to caveat all of this again by saying this is my opinion. I haven't read this from a book. This is just an opinion that I have created over the many years of being a developer. I have noticed that my definition of production ready is different to other people's definition of production ready. So let's talk about that for a minute. Okay, so let's start by saying that software cannot make returns if the software is not in production. And by that I mean that software cannot make money if that software is not available in production. So I've chosen a monetary thing there, finance. It's not financially viable. It's not making any revenue if it's still in development. As soon as it comes out of development and it's in production, then that becomes hopefully something that is going to generate income and revenue. And so you can see the difference now between, or I hope you can, between what a developer's definition of production ready is compared to, say, the manager's or the shareholder's definition of production ready. Because they would have more concerns over whether or not that system that the developers have created is actually creating money. Whereas a developer would be less concerned whether their software is going to create the money or not, because they will get paid regardless. They will get paid regardless, and therefore their definition of production ready is very different. We care, us developers, when I say we care more about things like scalability, meeting the project requirements, stability, whether or not the feature that we've created is well documented, well tested, well architected, well monitored and maintained. Whereas someone who relies on that software to generate money would have less concerns over whether it's documented or not, or whether it's tested or not, or whether and they wouldn't give flying monkeys as to what architecture it's using, or what framework it's being using, or what version of what language it's on, or whatever. They'll have less of those kind of concerns. They're not going to stress about that. Whereas us developers, that's what we care about. That's what we are paid to care about. We're paid to care about the things that we build in the terms of the technicalities of those things, instead of the monetary output of those things. I mean, yeah, there's I can list a couple of well, I won't say their names, but I can list a couple of projects that I've worked on in the past where we built a load of stuff that never actually got to production and therefore never actually got out to the public. And we were spending a long time building that software. And the developers, myself included, we were less concerned that it was actually not out. We just wanted to build the thing as best as we possibly can do. So when it did go out, if it did go out, which it didn't, then it would show off our ability as software developers. Whereas the concern over the manager's concerns were more to do with when is it able to be released, or is there a demand for this, or can we generate enough marketing around for this, that kind of jazz, the stuff that we are less concerned with. Okay, so a manager or a stakeholder or some non-technical actor will be more concerned with, does it run and can it turn a profit? Or how quickly, I suppose, can you get it out the door? And that would be their concerns, not necessarily our concerns. So different features within the software may yield higher returns. than other features, and therefore are seen as more valuable to have. So, for example, content management systems. If you've got let's say you're building a system, or it could even be a CRM or something that members of staff of the company are going to be using. So maybe there's a help desk, and you're building software. You've built the front end, and now you're working on the back end, or you did it in tandem or whatever, however you've developed it. And there are some staff that are working on the back end and fielding calls and updating the database that you and your team have developed. And you're also maintaining the front end, that is public facing. Now, in terms of a developer, both of those systems are incredibly important. Both of those systems need to have a high level of production ready-esque-ness, I suppose. So both the back end and the front end, both the CRM, the CMS, and the public-facing e-commerce shop, let's say, need to be well documented, well maintained, well tested, obviously stable, well monitored, performant, and all of that jazz. Whereas if you look upon it from in the eyes of someone who is less technical, who is more of a stakeholder of the business, they would rightly so think that, hang on a minute, we got a staff of 20 people here, all working on, or 15 people, 5 people, it doesn't matter how many, all working on this thing that they know day in and day out. Yes, it's incredibly slow. Yes, we keep fielding a load of calls around the same thing. Yes, we've done a load of internal training to make sure that we know the workarounds that the developers have quickly shoehorned in order to get things, these sort of workaround features done in a very snappy, short period of time. Yes, we know the software is very old. Yes, we haven't updated the versions of various things for a long time. Yes, we're aware of all of these things that we need to do. Yes, we're aware of all the technical debt that's involved here. But do we care more about the back end, the CRM, the CMS, more than the front end? If we say we have a group of, let's bring it down to 5 members of staff, right? So you could grab them, put them around a table, and talk to them about a specific thing, right? You don't have to field a load of, you don't have to organize a big assembly hall for a meeting. It's just 5 people, and they are working on the back end, but they are working on the back end, whereas the front end that is I don't know, let's say it's an e-com site that's making money. Let's say, for example, that is being seen by hundreds of thousands of people every week, and it's generating a huge amount of money. And we are putting all of our emphasis and our time and our energy into making that as fast, as scalable, as reliable, as profitable as it possibly can do. The stakeholders and the managers are going to be more concerned with the front end in terms of getting that production ready rather than the back end, in my experience. And this is no fault of their own. It's just, where is the money coming from? And yes, you could speak to the people manning the help desk, and yes, they'll have shopping lists of things that they would like to get the developers to build, because it's going to make their life a lot easier. And yes, if you did an interview with them, which I have done before, you can identify areas of work that you could package up into work units that will save a tremendous amount of time for these people. But the thing that the managers have to deal with is, where do you put the resource and the energy? Because the more times you spend working on the back end, is less time you're going to make the front end as profitable and as reliable as it possibly can do. Plus, if something goes really badly in the back end, in the CRM or whatever, you can always fall back to doing some dirty hack, some dirty workaround. Whereas if something goes really badly in the front end, as in it goes down for an hour, then you can actually put a monetary value on that time in which it goes down. This is why a lot of, and I think I've mentioned this before, a lot of systems have very different sort of halves of the field. You know, the first half of the football game, let's say, is very nice and shiny, and it's what the public see, whereas the other half of the football field isn't. It's full of weeds. It's full of weeds, but that's full of workarounds and hacks and stuff that the developers have had to put in very quickly. Usually what happens is that it gets to a point where you have to split away the back end and the front end. So you end up with two monoliths, essentially, rather than a single monolith, if you haven't gone to microservices already. But it's just very interesting, and I find these kind of these things sort of very interesting to sort of think about. You know, what does production ready mean? And as a contractor, as someone who's been in various different industries, various different sizes of teams, some teams have, departments of help for the public. Some have specific departments for QA testing and engineering. It's very different to speak to. It's very interesting to speak to them and get their ideas as to what they define as production ready, and then speaking to the business owners as well is what is it that they're actually concerned with. And it's fascinating because I really like doing this, and it's because you end up getting a very well-rounded view, a picture of software, and you get to see all the players and their agendas and what they are concerned more with. And yeah, it's just very fascinating. Sometimes I feel like software developers can get quite siloed. This is, and they think that whatever is important to them should be important to everyone else. But that's simply not the case. That's simply not the case. Just seeing the chat here. Business cares about technology debts when it is an obstacle for making money. That is an incredibly good point. So the technicalities of things do often, as you rightly mentioned, do become barriers to generating the profit, generating the money. There are obviously other influences as well, like for example, if you have to meet some regulatory sort of thing that says that your software needs to be at this version or whatever, then there are certain things, certain industries that have to keep up to the latest and greatest stuff. So there are things in place for certain industries to prevent you from going back into that sort of technical debt sort of space. But I see this very much like road accidents, for instance. So the government won't put in certain safety measures to certain areas of the road, right? If there's a risky part of the road and people are there's casualties because of this risky part of the road, and it's quite obvious that all we need to do is put in some traffic lights or something, then what the government will unfortunately do is wait until there is enough money being lost because of those incidents to then justify the need of putting in the traffic lights. It's not going to just take one person from being in an accident. It'll be a mark on a spreadsheet, and when that spreadsheet gets enough columns, then if the tally is high enough, then something will happen. It's the same with this in the sense of money. So if there is something that the developers want to change because of technical debt, but it doesn't actually make a lot of money, then there'll be less emphasis, less desire to getting that thing approved and getting that thing done. which I understand. It's a shame though, because it does drag legacy code along with you. It's like, you can never get away from legacy code. You can never get away from technical debt. It's just part and parcel of what we do, and it's like I said, it's an incredibly interesting topic, I find, because you start to see web development, software development in very different lights, through the eyes of different people, through the prism of various different things. What does it mean to have a website, or build a website, or have a website, for various different actors? What are the minimum requirements that people desire for a production-ready website? I can certainly say that for me, I have a very high level of technical requirements personally in order for it to go live, for anything to go live. But it's a very different story for other people, and they are and the point is that I'm trying to make here in a very roundabout way is there is no right or wrong answer. The managers aren't right, the developers aren't right. It's a shared ecosystem. It's a shared sort of space that we all inhabit, and getting something production ready needs to be agreed on by all. And I think that everybody needs to have their say as to what they feel production ready should be. But anyway, that's my rant. I'm going to go and rest my foot, because it's starting to ache a bit. So I'm going to grab some ice and just chill out, I think. And I will hopefully be on Twitch on Sunday, but it really depends, because I want to stand. Those streams are really long, and I don't like sitting down for long periods of time. But standing is a bit painful at the moment, especially if I'm having to shift my weight to the other foot. You end up doing all sorts of mischief on the other side of the body. So I'm just trying to chill out at the moment, get that sorted. Luckily, like I said, I have this. I've had this week off, so I've been able to just chill out. But it was a proper mistake, like a typical mistake. I did a run for, I think it was about 4 miles, 3.5 miles, something like that. And we got to the second mile. I was running with the dog, me and Murphy, and we got to the second mile, and I just rolled the ankle, and I just told myself to man up and get on with it. And actually, we ran faster on the way home. We got it wasn't a PR or anything, but we certainly got a very fast time back. But that didn't help. That didn't help. So I am a victim of my own stupidity. And it's unfortunate, because I had so many good plans for running with Murphy over this, because we got bank holiday Monday, you see. So I was going to plan to do a nice long distance, sort of like an 8-mile run with him. But that's gone out the window. Anyway, thank you ever so much for watching. Happy coding, everybody, and I will let everybody know if I'm live streaming on Twitch this Sunday. Take care, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers. Bye bye. Bye bye.